If you want to resolve some issues or problems that you're dealing with in your life, you need to first go to the area where the problem is experienced. Now, what do I mean by that? Most of us, when we have an issue, we might have an issue with other people, a situation in life, and it becomes this story in your mind. And then you're trying to resolve it or find an answer to that or fix it in your mind. And that can go on forever and ever because it's a story about an experience that you're having inside of your body. Let me give you an example. For instance, when I work with a client, let's see, if somebody comes in with relationship issues, and they come in and they're really, really upset. And they come in, and they're like, rah, rah, rah. They talk about what their partner's doing or not doing. And then he said this, and then she said that. This is a story that's happening in the mind. And of course, we want a solution to the problem. And we're trying to find a solution by talking about it and by talking louder about it and by putting more energy into it. All along, there is something much deeper going on. For instance, if a client comes in and they talk about their relationship and blah, 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 of course, I'm listening to their story, but I'm not really listening to their story. I'm listening to the storyteller behind the story. So if this person comes in and they're telling their story, I'm just sensing what is going on behind there. And as they talk, then I start sensing also from the story, but also from their energetic expression or emotional expression. Then I might say, wow, that's really upsetting, isn't it? And then I might go, yeah, it's really upsetting, because they are actually met. The emotion is met at that moment. But that's just the beginning. What we are getting down to as we listen to the storyteller and the client becomes more aware of the storyteller because I invite them to be present with that experience, it might drop deeper and deeper. And then I might notice and say something like, wow, you're really not being heard, are you? And that could be the trigger that is causing this whole story and this whole emotion. So if I say that, it's like, wow, you're not being heard, then there is like, because that moment they feel heard. I hear the part of them that doesn't feel heard. And that moment they're heard. So there is often a little pause when they go, oh, yeah, I want to be heard. And then we can be present with that part that is hurt because they're not being heard. And that's a whole different story than what's going on in the mind. So then when they become aware of what they really want, that's that place where you go when you start finding out, well, what do I want? We often say, I don't want that. But then often the question is like, well, what do you want? And in this case, I just want him or her to hear me and to really hear me. So I feel heard. So then we're that next step, like, I really want to feel heard. Now, that can be a very vulnerable place to be and to admit. And most of us feel scared to make ourselves vulnerable because we may not get what we want. And then it's like, oh, it's better not to say it. But that's not true. If you get in touch with the part that really wants to be heard, and if you own that, if you embrace that, see, that's where the self-love comes in. This is where the all formula, ALL, that I have talked about before, where first you allow yourself to actually become present with the part that wants to be heard. And then you listen to that part, like, oh, I so want to be heard. And then there might be a lot of emotions and memories where you were not heard. And it hurts not to be heard. Let's be honest. We all like to be heard and met and understood. But the way the world is, it's a rare thing. And when you finally are heard, and that can often happen, when you're doing some healing work with somebody, because we're trained to hear, see, sense what's going on. And then we can help bring that to the awareness of whoever is we're working with. So when they become aware and really start listening and honoring to that part, how important it is to be heard. And then be kind to that part. Start honoring, accepting, and loving the part that was never heard and has been hurting ever since. Then you can start becoming present and really compassionate with that part. And the more you do that, the more you accept the fact that this is really important for you without judging yourself, shaming yourself, thinking you shouldn't have those needs and wants. The bottom line is you have them. We all have them. And I know in my own experience, as when I have accepted that I have those needs without any shame or judgment, and just fully own and say, you know what? It's really important for me that I feel heard. It's such a deep longing to just be heard by somebody. And then it can relax, right? Then we are actually hearing the part that wants to be heard. So in that moment, it is being heard. And by me as a therapist hearing the part that wants to be heard, that gives the person, the client, the soul over there, it gives them an opportunity to actually do that with themselves and say, oh, I really want to be heard. And you can feel that there is a softening and a kindness in that. And then when we just embrace and allow that need to be there, it's a whole different story to share it with your partner. Can you feel the difference between going, you never listen to me and you, blah, 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 or we're blaming the other? They'll go like, whoa. That's how we all, nobody wants to be blamed or told how we should be. But when we show up with a vulnerable heart and a vulnerable emotion and say, you know what, it just hurts me when I share something that's really important to me and you're not hearing me the way I want to be heard. So I want to let you know that if I get upset, it's actually because I'm hurting, because I just really want to be heard by you. And there is this specific part in me that wants to be heard by you. And now I'm hearing it myself. So it's easier for me to share that with you. You see the difference, how different that is. And what do you think your partner's going to do? Most likely, but not always. Not everybody is receptive to that, but most often they will go, oh. And then they may show up with their vulnerability and say, yeah, but when you come across with that yelling, I just want to run away. But I want to hear you. I want to be connected with you. And the whole energy changes. So there is a big difference between listening to the story and listening to the storyteller, because the storyteller wants to be heard. And the only way they know how to is to create a story. And nobody really wants to hear the story because it is a story and it doesn't really bring forth what the storyteller is trying to convey. So an invitation is always to take the time to, when you're upset, to ask yourself, what is it that I really want that is underneath this upset? What part of me is trying to reach out but doesn't know how to do it in a way where I'm fully transparent and authentic? And I know it can be very scary in the beginning, and that's why it's good to do it with somebody that you feel safe with. Could be a best friend, could be a therapist, a coach, a teacher, your dog, your cat, just to practice saying, or most certainly yourself, the mirror, if you've tried that, just to try and just feel okay about having needs. We all have them. Pretending we don't have them is not going to work. So I hope that is helpful if you find yourself in a situation where you have a story going on that you want other people to take care of, to meet in a way. They will meet you much, much easier if you share your vulnerability about what you really want. But please start with somebody where it feels safe, where you are being heard, so that you can start building a new muscle where you can also be safe in yourself by owning that need and being okay with having that need. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having needs. We all have them. It is human to have needs. And the more we allow ourselves to have these needs, the easier we can allow them and share them if it's necessary. And then you might just notice that something is going to change in your life.